there enough food on the USS Lincoln?
Yeah, it is. That was a CNN fake report. The Lincoln has been out there for a period of time, good period of time. But over the years, we've had them out there much longer. I was at a group meeting, and an admiral came up to see me over the weekend. And it was at a big group, and he happened to be an admiral retired. He said, I've been on ships that are out there much longer than that, sir. And I know people on the Lincoln, they say it's beautifully maintained and beautifully taken care of. And other people went out and they found out to be true. It was fake news reporting from CNN.
He always knows someone, always has an unnamed person who told him, sir, it's wonderful, it's beautiful, it's never been better. Joining us, MS Now, Pentagon reporter Priya Sridhar, who had some of the first reporting on the USS Lincoln. Veteran Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr joins us as well, and Peter Baker is still around. So, Priya, what do we know about the actual conditions on the USS Lincoln?
Yeah, I mean, where to begin with those comments? I think, first of all, President Trump saying that these deployments have gone on for much longer, that is not true. We can fact check that right now. The Lincoln hit a modern day record in the Navy for the most continuous days at sea without a port call, 208 days, which is why they were having a lot of these issues when it comes to food shortages and supply shortages. That, in addition to the fact that Iranian missiles struck Fifth Fleet's headquarters in Bahrain, which made it even more difficult for the Navy to resupply that ship. They had to pivot to a British military base in the Indian Ocean called Diego Garcia, which is about 2,200 miles away from the Gulf of Oman, where that aircraft carrier was. So that is the reason that there were issues when it comes to supply. In addition to that, you know, you look at the USS Ford, and that also hit a record 326-day deployment in support of military operations in Venezuela. And then they were also deployed to support Operation Epic Fury. So what you're seeing consistently is what a standard Navy aircraft carrier deployment, which was 6 to 7 months, has now been stretched to 9 months and beyond. And it's taking a toll not just on the crew, who is physically exhausted. The morale is obviously struggling with the constant deployment extensions without understanding what the end state is in Iran. So I think that is really what the issue is here, Katie.
Let me play a few interviews that you had done, Priya, with family members of those on board the ship.
I don't think it's the ship is the issue. I think it's our president, it's our government that's not helping the morale. I think the ship is doing what they can do with what they're given. But I think our government needs to be doing more for our military that's sitting over there.
They didn't choose to be there. They volunteered to be there. They're willing to be there, and they're doing their best. So they want our support. And part of that support means we have to have the tools to do our job. That means the fuel. That means the food, right? That means the food. That means the toothpaste and the deodorant. That means all of it.
I didn't want to go to war. I thought, we're tired of these wars. He said, you know, I don't know what's happened. I don't know why he went against this. I don't know why he did what he did. I'm very curious, and I hope it was worth it. And that's all I can say is, like, I hope it was worth it, because I probably won't vote anymore.
There's a lot there, not to mention the disillusionment from that last mother voting for Trump because of no more war, and then being disappointed. But also serious discrepancies, Barbara, between what family members of sailors are saying is happening on that ship and what the administration is trying to claim, that it's all wonderful. You also have this from the CENTCOM commander, who's calling it old news. Issues related to food, hot water, and other concerns raised months ago were addressed by leadership and resolved. The crew is tired, but they continue to fire on all cylinders. History will record this deployment as one of the most operationally intense and consequential of this modern era. The question is, will history also record it as one in which the Pentagon failed its service members?
Well, Katie, I think it's clear that it's, in some cases here, failing service members and failing military families. You know, You can debate endlessly about the situation on board, but the families clearly are expressing a serious lack of confidence at this point in the Pentagon and in the political leadership in the U.S. military and in the White House. And families and military families, especially, expressing that lack of confidence, that's very important because that goes directly to morale of the troops. Look, you have about 5,000 troops on board any aircraft carrier. Everyone's going to have a different experience. But to say, one, it's fake news, clearly it's not, because the commander already has said now, yes, it happened. And in fact, the acting Secretary of the Navy put out a statement addressing how they were trying to cope with it. But I don't know that you can say it's been taken seriously enough and that this lack of confidence is going to be resolved, because even those who are acknowledging it happened, they're saying, oh, it's old news. Oh, the mental health problems, there weren't that many troops. That's a pretty poor answer for any situation aboard a U.S. military asset. If there are mental health problems, get more help out to the troops. And quite interestingly, there is reporting out there that that's exactly what the Navy is doing. It is getting more mental health resources out to the ship. So there are problems, there have been problems, there are ongoing problems. The facts don't lie.
It's part of it that the people in charge, Priya, are literally not allowed under this president to say anything but how wonderful everything is. If they step out of line and say, we are going to address those problems, and yeah, we've heard these reports too, we're getting to the bottom of it, we're going to fix it. Is that the sort of thing that maybe they're worried to say because the president of the United States and the defense secretary are so quick to fire people?
Well, I think that was the theme that I heard from a lot of the families, is that they simply did not feel like anyone was listening to them. They felt like they were deployed to this war and then they were essentially forgotten about on this aircraft carrier on the other side of the world. And then they were repeatedly hearing from the administration that this war was won, that Iran's military had been completely destroyed. So they had hopes that, you know, this war that was supposed to be a few weeks long, they would be able to end their deployment on schedule. And then they're also hearing, on the other hand, that the Navy can impose this blockade indefinitely. So I think there's a lack of trust there where they're starting to not believe anything that the administration says. So I can tell you from speaking to a lot of the families over the weekend regarding CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper's visit to the Lincoln, that when he went on the ship and said that you guys are in fact going to be relieved and you're going to go home, they started to feel cautiously optimistic and hopeful that perhaps that would be the case, because at this point they don't really trust anything that the political appointees who are overseeing the military and especially President Trump has to say about their timeline or when they're going home. They frankly feel very gaslit, especially by a lot of these comments that are sort of trying to say that this was all fake news and that none of these families had any concerns and that everything on the ship was completely fine.
Yeah, how much longer are they going to be there? Donald Trump's now talking about the U.S. taking control and owning the Strait of Hormuz at some point. Peter, let's talk about South Korea. What is the president doing? Why is he diminishing war games with South Korea? Has North Korea denuclearized? Have they made any big concessions?
No, quite the opposite. In fact, you know, when North Korea, when President Trump first took office in 2017, North Korea had about 10 or 20 nuclear weapons, according to experts. Today, they have around 60. So in other words, they've only grown their nuclear arsenal, even as the president is taking us to war in Iran, because he doesn't think Iran should have a nuclear weapon. He seems to be concerned about the potential Iranian nuclear weapon, which a lot of people are concerned about, but not so concerned about the actual nuclear weapons in North Korea. In fact, praising their leader, Kim Jong-un, who hasn't, made a concession yet. And it's a fascinating dichotomy there, right? Why is it that he cares about a rogue state with nuclear weapons here and not there? But he's had a thing in his bonnet about these joint military exercises since his first term. He reduced them, ordered them reduced in the first term as well, said the same kind of thing. They're too expensive. Why should we be spending money on the South Koreans and so forth? And now, obviously, somebody got this in his radar screen again, and he's made a point of saying he's going to pull back once again. I think what it misses is it's understandable, and a lot of people would agree that the allies should be, picking up as much of the burden as they can. That's a theme that's, cross administrations, Republican and Democrat, over the years. But it also kind of misses the point that there's a reason why American troops are in South Korea that's not just for South Korea, which is for American interest, which is to say that if the North Koreans took over South Korea, that would only make North Korea a more dangerous place for the United States of America. So the United States has not done this out of altruism. It's done it out of its own interests.